All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here, we're doing 2023 preview and prediction for the Auburn Tigers. Looking at this coaching staff, it's a brand new one, Nick. Hugh Freeze, he has arrived 34-14 the last 4 years at Liberty. Everyone knows about what he was able to accomplish at Ole Miss. He's going to bring in Philip Montgomery as his offensive coordinator, spent the last 8 years at Tulsa. Ron Roberts comes over from Baylor and Dave Aranda's group to call the defensive plays for them. I think for Auburn, the biggest storyline here is they've really weathered the storm well from a tense but short Brian Harsin era that led to a lot of departures and just a lot of up and downs. Looking at this offense, though, Nick, it was not great. 25 points per game last year. They were towards the bottom of college football in most categories other than running the football. This is obviously a big bright spot for them. That really didn't kick in gear until late in the year. You look at the portal, they lost 5 guys. None of them really major. They added 8. These guys will mainly be starters for them. I think some big-time additions on both sides of the ball. The running game, though, 250-plus rushing over the final 4 games of the year. A lot of development left in these quarterbacks. TJ Finley, he transfers out, of course. Robbie Ashford, though, I thought he should have been the starter last year. He ended up getting the nod. Wasn't all that great, and that's why this running game really was stifled early on in the year. It's just they were so one-dimensional, Nick, because they had plenty of issues at wide receiver also. Ashford, though, a dual-threat guy who's a good runner. The accuracy was quite shaky, pretty slow delivery. He does have a strong arm, though. He can really push it downfield. He did fumble 12 times, so I think ball security and taking sacks is an issue. And when I made this prediction originally for Auburn, I just said they're a quarterback away from potentially doing some big things. They were able to land that Peyton Thorne. He was a late addition to the portal after swinging and missing on a lot of other guys. The Tigers and Hugh Freeze were able to get him. This is a guy that comes from MSU, has some good zip, ball placement. I liked his ability on the quick slant, some good touch, on the seam routes and the post corner. He's got great, poise as well. I was very impressed with what he was able to do as a freshman, especially as a sophomore. He had a lot more responsibilities this year. What do you make of this quarterback battle for Auburn, Nick? And you think Peyton Thorne arriving late is going to be, bad for this football team?
Yeah, Auburn is a very interesting team to look at in college football. The Brian Harsin era, of course, ends in kind of a fireball of a mess. Cadillac Williams kind of comes in and stabilizes things. They go out and get Hugh Freeze here. Controversial hire, certainly to say the least, after what happened at Ole Miss. But he's a damn good football coach, right? And that's all that matters in the SEC. The record speaks for itself at Liberty, 34-14. Whole new staff across the board. And they're really bringing in a whole new offense here, right? They're bringing in Peyton Thorne here. I think Thorne's a great get out of the portal from Michigan State, right? He's a solid quarterback, good passer. I like the accuracy he has, solid in the pocket. I think he's a good talent piece to grab here. Of course, I've never been a big fan of grabbing quarterbacks late in the cycle. I think there's just not enough time to really acclimate yourself to the offense and your new weapons around you when you grab a guy this late in the cycle. But I think this is a huge get for Hugh Freeze, like you said, swing and a miss on a lot of talented players in the portal. But he goes in and grabs Thorne here. I think that's why this job for Freeze was a very attractive job, right? Auburn has a ton of money of NIL war chest, and they got a lot of potential here. People want to play for Auburn. It's a passionate fan base who care about this team no matter how bad they are. So they're going to be able to, fill that stadium at Jordan-Hare every single weekend. This could be a quick turnaround here for Hugh Freeze, as he's going to have a lot of potential to grab players out of the portal. And you saw that with landing Thorne, a huge get for him. I think Thorne's the right guy to lead the keys to this offense here. I thought Robbie Ashford should have been the starter as well, but just really didn't quite live up to the expectations that they had for him down on the plains. Thorne, though, taking over, I think this could be a huge boom or bust offense. There's a lot of potential here. And when you have such a talented running back core that remains, and they were picking up 205 yards per game on the ground, there's really a lot of potential with this offense.
Yeah, they also have Holden Grenner. He seems to be, a much better fit for this balanced spread than the other two in Ashford and Thorne, redshirt freshman. We'll see if he gets any involvement. Philip Montgomery, he's going to bring an aggressive attacking style offense to the field here. They like to spread things out, the half-field vertical passing game. This was an Art Briles disciple. Tulsa, they didn't really run the ball all that well this past year because you really need a strong interior offensive line to be effective running. And that's certainly an area of concern for Auburn. But we'll continue to look at the weapons that Auburn has before we talk about the O-line. Jarquez Hunter, this is a guy that has some good burst to the outside due to impressive acceleration. I love his long speed, good vision and patience. He's not all that versatile, but the things he does well, he does them very well. He doesn't seem to showcase many moves, but he understands leverage, and he actually is a pretty quality pass catcher, so we'll look for more utilization in that area. The addition of Brian Beatty gives Auburn one of the nation's best running back duos, I would say. This is a guy that comes over from USF. 3 kick return touchdowns in 2021. He has great speed, elite burst. He takes very good angles, covers ground while making cuts. Very good contact balance, and he isn't afraid of contact one bit. I love this 1-2 punch Auburn has, Nick. Philip Montgomery, he's going to want to run the football. Now, how do you feel about these two guys and, Hunter potentially not being available early on in the year?
Right, Jacques Hunter, of course, a really talented running back who does have some off-the-field issues at the University of Auburn. Auburn University is figuring out. They're going to work on that. Potential suspension incoming, probably a short game suspension. When he is going to be on the field, though, he's a super talented back. I mean, the production is there, right? 668 yards on the ground last year, and sort of a supplementary role behind Tank Bigsby. Of course, he could receive the ball pretty well as well. 17 catches, 224 yards receiving, and 2 scores. So Hunter's got a lot of potential here. I think there is some talent. Bringing in Beatty as well bringing him in. He's a talented player. 800 yards. I think this is a very nice 1-2 punch. They're going to stick to the ground and pound. I think they're going to kind of focus on that. I know they're transitioning to a new scheme potentially, but I think they got a lot of talent here on the ground that could really kind of pick up the ground game, ground and pound, and really grind down these teams in the SEC.
Now looking at the receivers for Peyton Thorne, Javaris Johnson, he was one of the only guys you could count on a season ago. This is a player that can stretch the field vertically with some good speed, primarily a slot guy. He's really good in the open field. Didn't get many chances of this past season. Camden Brown, an underrated player for them, height and physicality combo, 6'3", 202. Kind of reminds you of what Hugh Freeze had at Ole Miss. The athletic ability checks out. I love him as a red zone target. They didn't have much, leading into this offseason, but they were able to make some big-time additions. Nick Martner from Cincinnati, much needed height in this room of 6'6", 215, some really good range, an experienced player with some good speed. Isn't the most athletic guy, but he can certainly make plays in the red zone. At tight end, Rivaldo Ferryweather from FAU, good speed in the open field, a long strider. He moves like a wide receiver, some good concentration. Not the best inline blocker, and he had 5 drops, so his role will be interesting to see this year. And not only that, Nick, they also, other than Thorne here late in the cycle, were able to pick up Shane Hooks and Caleb Burton, attach to this room, go alongside Coy Moore, who's a veteran with them. I think was the second leading pass catcher a season ago. So all of a sudden, Auburn, they had some very key areas to improve on this roster, and they were able to do that this offseason. Obviously, chemistry will have to be built fairly quickly in the SEC, but I think sky's the limit here for the Tigers.
Yeah, I love this pass catching core. There's a lot of talent here. You bring back Johnson, your leading receiver from a season ago, is certainly what you want to see. 400 yards receiving, 19 yards per catch, plus 3 scores for him. I think Camden Brown, underrated piece, 13.7 yards per catch, 2 scores for him on 9 receptions last season. Very limited role for him, but he's got a ton of talent. They brought in some pieces from the portal, Shane Hooks. There is some talent here. I think there's a lot of potential with this offense. I like these weapons for Peyton Thorne here. Yes, I get concerned with the kind of plugging in. Like I said, short, quick turnaround, plug in these guys, and they don't really have a lot of experience playing together. But I think there's a lot of talent here to work with.
And looking at this offensive line, they replaced both starting tackles, and they do that with 2 good transfers. Dylan Wade, he follows Montgomery over. He has some good agility, nice lateral movement. Hand placement certainly needs improved. Feet aren't always moving, so there's some things he needs to work on. And his physicality, I think, needs a bit of an up, at least playing this conference. Gunnar Britton, though, coming from Western Kentucky, played over 1,000 snaps last year in that air raid. He certainly has plenty of conditioning under his belt, and he can play both sides. He was really good in pass protection, a wide stance, some really good strength. Doesn't have the greatest drive in the run game, but we also don't have that much tape considering the offense WKU runs. The lateral agility is also a little bit iffy, but I love his coordination in pass pro. That's something you really needed to improve on. And then you look at Avery Jones coming over. This was another bit of a late add as well from ECU. He was a very consistent player in pass protection. I love his hand placement in the run. Showcases some good strength in pass protection as well at 6'4", 288. Those 3 guys right there, Nick, those guys are going to be massive additions here for this unit. The biggest problem, though, is you do need physicality from your interior O-line for this scheme to work. And 2 guard positions, especially right guard, are big question marks. How big of an impact will these 3 transfers have, considering some of the other parts of this unit are iffy?
Right, I agree. I think these transfers have to step in. I think Gunnar Britton is a talented piece to grab. Obviously the accolades speak for themselves. Of course, we don't really know like you said, we don't really know about the run protection, but that's just the nature of the offense he played in. Avery Jones as well, a lot of potential there. Dylan Wade, I think he's a talented player at left tackle. I like him there. I definitely think these guys got to work together. I think, physicality is important. We highlighted this with other SEC teams. You want to be physical in the trenches, and I think that Auburn kind of just lacks that physicality right now. That could be a huge problem for them.
Now, QB play drastically needs a boost. I think you're going to check that mark, and the pass protection also needs one. I think you're going to check that mark also. I'm going to go with a final grade of a B here. I love what they did in the portal. Obviously, chemistry, something they'll have to find, but I don't think Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery are going to have to wait very long for this offense to start clicking. What are your final assumptions of what they're going to do this year?
I agree. This is an offense that has a lot of potential. I think if they stick to the ground game and use their weapons they have on the ground, they could definitely produce some nice scores and be able to pick up a ton of yards on the ground. I think B- is kind of right where this team belongs in offense. There's a lot of potential here.
Look at the defensive side of the ball. This is a team that has 6 departures in the portal. They added 7 players, all depth pieces added to the front 7. 5 of those transfers were on the D-line, 2 at linebacker. This is a team that certainly struggled against the run and, they allowed almost 30 points per game. That's really not terrible considering how much this offense struggled at times. This is a good pass rushing group last year that lacked production, though. They only had 26 sacks. Now they lose the top 4 sack getters. Players are very high on this defensive line coaching staff, though, and I love the additions they've made. Justin Rogers, he comes over from Kentucky, 6'6", 332. He's a good run stopper. Jason Jones last year from Oregon, 6'6", 328. Mosiah Nazil-Kite from Maryland, and then Lawrence Johnson, 6'2", 310. All those guys are 300-plus pounds, Nick. You add those 4 players in with Marcus Harris, who's shown the ability to pierce gaps vertically from his defensive end position, good ability to shed at the point of attack. Offers little as a pass rusher. They're going to look for him to move outside the end, so he's going to have to improve significantly as a pass rusher. But on paper, you look at the size they have, because Harris himself, 6'3", 294. I love the additions they've made to beef up this unit, considering how poor they were last year against the run. Again, they do lose 4 very important pieces, but I definitely don't think they're going to have much issues here replacing these guys. Elijah McAllister, another guy they added up front from this transfer portal group. What are your expectations for this group and this defensive line, that is?
I like this front 7 defensive line. There's some talent here. I think Elijah McAllister is a good piece to add out of the transfer portal. I think, Marcus Harris coming back is a solid piece. I like what he can do. I think he's a talented piece. Potentially step up. Didn't get a whole lot of tackles last year, but 7 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 31 total for him. I'd like to see him step up this year and be involved and make a lot of moves. Good returning piece there. I think they add some nice portal pieces, Justin Rogers and Austin Keys. I think there's some solid pieces here around the front 7. I think they have some nice recruiting players coming in, true freshmen, Darren Reed, Wilkie Denard as well. They potentially be involved early on as they come in as one of the first classes for Hugh Freeze. This front 7 is solid. There's a lot of talent here. They can definitely get after the quarterback and make some headaches for some of the SC teams.
Now, the linebacking core is really not that bad itself. Cam Riley, he's a pretty sound tackler whenever he's consistent. I love his size, 6'5", 230, some good length as well. Needs to be better against the run. I do think they've made some good improvements here, though, in terms of depth. Demario Tolan, I believe he's a transfer from LSU. Eugene Asante, former UNC transfer. He should be back from injury. Austin Keys arrives from Ole Miss. He had 400 snaps last year. Very solid linebacker. And then you throw in Robert Woodyard, who was the highest rated recruit in the class of 2022 at 6'1", 240. I think there's some pretty impressive pieces here. Again, what are your thoughts on this entire front 7? Do you think it's going to be a good unit? Am I overrating them a little bit? What are your thoughts? Because there is a lot of new pieces here that I think will make some impacts.
There is a lot of new pieces here that makes impacts. I like this front 7. I think they're slightly overrated.
Benefit of the doubt, there was some serious talent. Also, Keys
Ole Miss, a huge pickup, like I said earlier. I like a lot of these pieces here. I think there's some serious talent. There's a lot of younger talent as well that can get some nice snaps early on, get some great experience. I think this front 7 will come into its own throughout the season. Can be very strong by November.
Now, they were 60th in passing yards per game allowed, but I think that number is going to significantly go up this year. I love this secondary. The duo of DJ James and Naheem Pritchard, I think they're going to do great work this year. James, he has good ball skills, impressive closing speed. He gets downhill in a hurry. He's versatile in coverage. He has very good quickness. The deep speed and physicality and run support are concerns, but overall he's very sound technique. I think it's going to do him very well in this conference, a former Oregon transfer. Pritchett, he's got good instincts in his own right. He can play in the slot. I like his punch and physicality and press. Some pretty good quick change of direction. He's a very willing run defender too. He's not the most reliable or the smartest one in terms of a football IQ standpoint. Those are things I think the staff can certainly get out of him, though. You look at the safety group, Zion Puckett, he's back. He should emerge as a leader. The other starter in Jalen Simpson, he also returns. He played very well at safety over the final 3 games of the year. Craig McDonald transferring. He arrived from, I believe it was Iowa State last year. He ends up transferring out of the program. Keontae Scott, though, he's a veteran. He should anchor that nickel role. In terms of depth, guys like Austin Osbury, J.D. Rhyme, very interested to see how they play. But I think in terms of a starting unit, Nick, this is a very good secondary. I think it's one of the nation's best.
I agree. This secondary has a lot of potential here. They add a lot of pieces in. I think bringing back Pritchett and James are 2 solid guys who played 12 games for the Tigers last year. Both had 37 total tackles. Pritchett, 4.5 tackles for loss. And a sack, 8 pass breakups for both of them. These guys are very talented players. They have a lot of experience here. They step back into this team. They've played together. They're good. They play well together. They got a good leadership role here. I like what they can do. I think there's some seriously talented pieces. They added some pieces from the portal as well. And they continue to grow as a team. These guys are getting older, more experienced, and playing more snaps together. I like this a lot. I think there's so much talent here with this secondary. They can definitely step up and raise that number of 60th in the country in pass defense, get potentially the top 30, 222 yards per game. It's not a terrible number to give up. Certainly, they can definitely cut that down this coming season.
Now looking at the schedule preview and prediction, when I first made this, I had them at 7-5, and I said that the offense needed to find an adequate passer to complement the versatile pass catching group. They were able to do that, so I think this team can certainly win 8 games. I don't have the guts to go back and fix it and see who they will beat because it is a very tough slate. They do have one of the nation's best running back duos. The spring game indicated this will be a very healthy rotation. The 3 adds on the offensive line, I think, give them a significant boost. To offset the issues at guard, that's certainly still an iffy spot for the Tigers, but the great size they added to the interior D-line should help plug up some of the run lanes. Linebacker group has potential and depth. They do lack star power, though, and the rich get richer in the secondary. They might not be able to wreak havoc like wanted from the safety position, but I certainly think this is going to be a very good group that opponents will have a tough time with. I'm very big on this Auburn football team this year, Nick. 75 for me. I think they can win this division, though. You look at the first part of the year, though, these first 6 games, I have them losing 3 in a row. A&M, Georgia, LSU. I think September 9th against Cal. That's going to be a very tough game. They got to go all the way out West Coast to Berkeley to play a Cal team that's got a lot of returning players. Justin Wilcox, he can scheme up a lot of different things for you to see. I think back after the year, they'll have some more success. It's a much easier part of their schedule as well, losing to Arkansas and Alabama. I really think this team can win the West, though, in Hugh Freeze's first year. That might be crazy to say, but we said the same thing about LSU last year, and, well, guess what?
Yeah, this is definitely a team that could go either way here. They could definitely potentially win the West or just bottom out entirely. I think a trip to Cal is a tough trip, right? But this team could be undefeated by the time they play Georgia at home, right? And you get, Jordan Hare's rocking. That could be a tough place for Georgia. Might catch the Bulldogs off guard. If this team can be able to beat A&M on the road in Kyle Field.
If this offense is clicking, the sky's the limit for this team. They could definitely
put up a nice record here, potentially get to 9 wins. I think they're probably going to be closer to 6 wins. I think that trip to Cal, it's just a very dangerous road, speed bump in the road for them because you got to travel out west, probably be late night, going to get you out of your kind of rhythm there. Tough kind of adjustment here. Justin Wilcox is going to put together a good scheme, I think. You and I have both been talking about this Cal game. It's one we circled in the early schedule for a couple of weeks now. It's a very exciting, interesting game to watch. Overall, this is not a bad schedule, right? Of course, you got Sanford, UMass, New Mexico State kind of giving you free wins there, and then you got the rest of your SEC schedule. They get Vanderbilt, their other crossover game. Not a bad pickup for Auburn here in Hugh Freeze's first season as their crossover game. This Tigers team has a lot of potential. The defense is going to be great this year. I think the offense could potentially be very good as well. I like the direction they're going. I think Hugh Freeze is a great hire on the Plains. I think Auburn can be competitive in the SEC West very soon.
I definitely think Cal is outmatched in the trenches, so I do see him winning that game. And like you said, September 30th against Georgia, this game is going to be a great indication of where this team is headed, and they could really shake some things up there at the end of September. You're looking at a potential top 5 ranking for this football team, believe it or not, if they can upset the Bulldogs there. That's going to be it for today's episode. As always, Nick, appreciate you joining me to talk Auburn.
Absolutely. As much as I do not like Auburn as an Alabama alum, I think they're a team that are heading in the right direction. There's so much potential. I think Hugh Freeze is a great hire on the Plains. If they can get if the boosters can get focused and give the money they need to give, this team can be competitive in the SEC West very soon.
That's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.